Hi, I'm Jeff Paterson from Rink Wide and the Carson Price Show. I've covered the Vancouver Canucks for more than 2 decades in this market, but I'm coming up on the I Only Touch Greatness podcast.
Looking for the most beers on tap, great steaks, great staff? Head over to the John B. Pub.
We got the best beers, steaks, chicken wings, nachos in town. Come see us at the John B. Pub.
The John B. Pub, the best bar in town. Come sign up for our football pool. Say hey, sent you.
Turn it up. The #1 sports podcast in Vancouver with Ryan Hayes and Big Mike.
Ryan Hayes and Big Mike. I never stop. I Only Touch Greatness podcast.
Ryan Hayes and Big Mike are taking over the podcast scene in Vancouver.
Everyone knows a good prospect.
Get down
It's
or lay
Vancouver's
down.
Ryan Hayes and Big Mike.
Yeah, likewise.
We've actually crossed paths a couple times along the way. Of course, 8 rinks recently, last weekend, and then before that, once at 8 rinks. I'll show you this right away. One time, this happened. There was the Quinn Hughes got in a fight at the World Juniors, and you made a comment about the good-looking guy in the Michigan
jersey, right? That's you.
Me.
Nice. Yeah, I mean, I vaguely remember that.
Many years ago.
Yeah,
exactly. Okay, we'll get started here. Growing up, it was in Vancouver you were born? I couldn't find that stat, actually.
Yeah, born and raised in North Van.
Okay. Did you play any other sports growing up, or was it basically, did you always want to be in sports broadcasting?
I played every sport. I was fortunate. I had 2 older brothers, still do, and they were totally into sports. And so it was natural in the household to do what they were doing and want to do what my older brothers were doing. So hockey was the big one, but we all played soccer and baseball and golf and tennis and pretty much anything that we could take our best shot at. And, ultimately hockey was the one that resonated with me and stuck with me. But yeah, no, I grew up in a household that sports were a big deal and just was able to pursue it as a career, and it's worked out okay.
And at what age did you know that you wanted to pursue it?
I knew pretty young, and it didn't have anything to do with, my hockey career wasn't going anywhere. Like I knew from a young age that I was never going to make it as a hockey player. It didn't even dawn on me. I mean, I guess like any kid, I had the dream of playing in the NHL, but I was a realist all those years ago. And I loved playing and played up through my late teens and sort of through high school, but never had designs on pushing it any further than that. And I would say it was around the time I was like 8 or 9 that I was sort of realizing that, hey, people were, this was a job path, a career path that, to talk about sports, whether it was on TV or I grew up in a household where the radio was always on. And I just grew this fascination with these voices that were in this box in our kitchen talking about not just sports. I mean, I listened when they were talking sports, but whether it was news or politics or whatever the topic of the day, just this idea that there were people that got to talk about things for a living. Like, how cool is that when you look at all the jobs that are out there? And here was this opportunity that, people were getting to, just explore topics so that they were passionate about and to express opinions and those types of things. And so honestly, from a pretty young age, I would say 8 or 9, the seed was planted. And then from there, it wasn't until kind of my high school days that I started to put a path together and figure out, okay, if I'm serious about this, how am I going to make it fly? And so I would say, if you go back in time, like to my high school days, my friends back then, they knew what I wanted to do for a living, and all of them were really supportive and thought it was pretty cool then. And all these years later to still be doing it, some of them are making more money. Some of them maybe have done other things, but, a lot of them look and think, man, like that's what you wanted to do way back then. And all these years later, you're still chasing your passion and getting to cover and talk about hockey for a living. That's a pretty good deal.
Yeah, the first time that I really realized it could be a job, for me, this is only a hobby, but for other people, it's a job. But it was Ray Romano. And of course, being in Everybody Loves Raymond, and getting to go into the change rooms, the dressing rooms, and doing interviews. So that was really when I first came upon the whole idea. What's one challenge you've come across in getting to where you are today?
Oh, there have been lots of them. I mean, it's a highly, highly competitive field. There aren't that many jobs, and I'm living proof that there are fewer jobs now than there were even a year ago. And so much of it is opportunity. There's luck, there's timing. Obviously, you have to be prepared and have put in the work. And I like to think that I've done that. And, I think one of the things that I've done well over the years is sort of find opportunities that maybe other people hadn't seen or didn't exist, and sort of create my own opportunities. And we're having to do that now in the digital space, certainly. But I would say more than anything, when I went to broadcast school way back when, there were guys that I think were equally talented. Maybe the motivation wasn't there to move away or to, put in the effort at the bottom of the ladder and have to climb your way up. And I just knew that going into it, that was part of the drill, that essentially when I got into the business, moving away to a smaller town and getting your opportunity and getting your reps there and getting on air. And, it wasn't always in sports as much as sports was my passion. And I was really fortunate. Like, I had classmates that came out of ECIT that moved to a lot of places that I figured I would have to, whether it was Smithers or Dawson Creek or those types of towns. I was able to bypass that, and I started in Kamloops, and I'll forever be grateful that I had that opportunity. And again, it was a marriage of luck and timing and the opportunity that presented itself. And when I look back, you need some good bounces along the way, and that was a huge one for me, getting a chance to start my career and earn a paycheck, as meager as it was way back then, but to start in a place like Kamloops and then be able to use that as a springboard to get back to Vancouver, which is home for me and where I always wanted to work and had designs on working. So, I've really only worked in two places. One was Kamloops, and after that, was able to get back here into the Vancouver market.
Yeah, and that's one thing you came to my next question, though. I always wanted to be in radio broadcasting. I always wanted to be playing on like a hip hop radio station, be the Kid Carson or somebody like that. Maybe not now Kid Carson, but I always wanted to be on the radio and grew up always trying to do that. And I actually started looking into it, and I would have had to go through that whole BCIT course as well. And then I was always told you're going to be moving up to Smithers or Inuit or some tiny little shit town that you got it. So when I read on your bio that you actually got to go do in Kamloops, and you were calling WHL games up there as well, I read, right?
Yeah, the dream for me early on was to be an NHL play-by-play guy. Like, play-by-play was it. That's what I really wanted to do. And so one of the things when I had this opportunity to go to Kamloops, originally I was hired. It was a summer job, and it was a junior news job. Like, sports wasn't even a part of it. But I thought, you know what? If I get my foot in the door, and I'm guessing that there will be opportunities to read some sports and then those types of things. So, you got to bet on yourself from time to time in life. And that was one of those moments where I thought, okay, I'm going to take this job. It was offered to me, but it was a news job. But on the weekends, you were a one-man band. You were the only guy in the newsroom, and part of that was you got to do sports. So I thought, cool, like, my job is in news, but I'm going to get this opportunity to do sports. Well, I moved to Kamloops in June of 1993. The Kamloops Blazers had just won the Memorial Cup in 1992, and then, as it turned out, they won it again in 1994. Well, Kelly Moore, who was the play-by-play voice of the Blazers at the time and had been there forever and was a legend, and also so remarkably talented, that he made the jump from junior hockey to the National Hockey League. Like, that was unheard of then. Usually guys had to make the jump to the American Hockey League and again climb the ladder. But he got a job in Winnipeg and left Kamloops. And so all of a sudden, I'm a year into the job in Kamloops with this dream of doing play-by-play. And I had tapes from, I used to do play-by-play at UBC when I was a student there, and did hockey and basketball and football. And I thought, like, all right, opportunity is calling here. I have to make my pitch. And sure enough, I did. And, they had lots of applicants from across the country. It was Kamloops. It was a really good team. It was a great city, a great hockey town. And I'll forever be grateful that the management group there, I'm sure, like, I have no doubt of this, and I'll take this to my grave, that I was, the affordable option. They didn't have to pay an awful lot back then. I had a year of experience, but they took a flyer on me and gave me the chance to do the play-by-play voice of the Kamloops Blazers. In my world, as I sort of saw my career unfolding, I wanted to be in the Western Hockey League by the time I was 30. And I got this job, I was 23. Turned out I was out of the Western Hockey League well before I was 30. So, it's funny, you set goals for yourself and then you have to be willing to change on the fly and adapt. And this one presented itself way sooner than I thought it was going to. And on top of all that, I got hired to do the play-by-play for the Kamloops Blazers in the summer, but the season was 1994-95. Well, the Blazers won the Memorial Cup again in 1994. Then Kelly Moore left. I took over. They were the defending champs, and they were hosting the tournament in 1995. So my first year on the job, I knew at the end of the rainbow, like they were going to be hosting the Memorial Cup. So what an incredible opportunity. And you look back at that team and, Jerome McGinley, Shane Doan, Darcy Tucker, Nolan Baumgartner, Jason Strudwick, Brad Lukowicz, on and on it goes. There were a few other guys that had a taste of life in the National Hockey League too. And it was truly one of the great junior hockey teams in the history of the Canadian Hockey League. And here I am, this first-year guy doing play-by-play, living my dream, watching a young Jerome McGinley just light up the Western Hockey League. Like, it was incredible. Like, it truly, when people say their dreams came true, like, for me, it did. Like, it could not have been any better. And then sure enough, they end up winning the Memorial Cup on home ice, absolutely trounced Detroit in the championship final. And so, a dream year for them, but also a total dream year for a young broadcaster that was still getting his feet wet and, wasn't very good at the time, but wanted to get good and wanted to make the most of the opportunity. And so just so thankful that somebody saw something in my potential and was willing to take a flyer on me and give me that opportunity.
And you used to cover golf as well, I believe. My question along these lines is, were you at Morgan Creek when John Daly stormed off the course at the old Canadian Open back in the day?
I was not. I've covered a fair bit of golf. Was fortunate to cover the Air Canada Championship and the GVO when it was here in Metro Vancouver. Covered a lot of Canadian Tour events. I love golf. Play it a lot. Play it at a reasonable level, and so it's kind of my summer passion. And any chance that I've had over the years to cover golf, I've jumped at it. And I love sort of those stories of guys that are out there grinding on the Canadian Tour, and you can see the potential, and then, what is it that sets them apart and allows some of the guys to ultimately get to the PGA Tour. So I've just loved being around any sort of professional golf events here, but no, I have heard the story, no guys that were there covering John Daly back in the day, but I was not one of them.
Okay, I was asking because, I was on the golf course with Grandma, and we were watching, and of course he came storming by us as a kid, and I didn't understand the situation, but I do now that I'm all growing up. But yeah, okay. And then 2010 Olympics, obviously it was the best 2 weeks of my life, give or take. But we all enjoyed it and stuff. You were working the Olympics. What memories do you have and your favorite moments?
Yeah, I mean, the idea of being a sportscaster and then having the Olympics in your hometown is just off the hook. And now, so much of the Olympics is governed by rights holders, and we weren't rights holders when I was working in radio. So you're covering it, but you're limited in, what you can go to and ultimately who you get a chance to talk to. But I ended up hosting a midday talk show all throughout the Olympics, and we were set up at Robson Square, right in the heart of downtown Vancouver. And it was sort of this international broadcast center. There were a lot of radio shows from around the world that were set up there. And so a lot of the champions would be brought here to do interviews, and they would just basically run them through a bunch of the different radio shows. And, so we had a chance to talk to a ton of gold medalists. And I remember, Tessa Virtue and Scott Moyer at the time, they won their first gold medal, and, they were just young kids and just the sheer joy of seeing these two that had won gold the night before, and here they are a few hours later, and they're making their way with their gold medals, and they gave us a chance to hold them and put them on and those kinds of things. Like, that sticks with me all these years later. But I just love the vibe in the city. I mean, I remember how it's February and the weather was incredible. We were out in t-shirts and stuff, and
right.
And so that was one of my memories. And obviously there was a lack of snow early on for some of the skiing events, but it started slowly and then it built, and obviously built to the men's gold medal game. I didn't have a chance. I was on the air, so I didn't go to the men's gold medal game. I did go to the women's gold medal game in hockey though, and that was a great memory. And just the pride you feel of having the home country win in your hometown. There was so many. I mean, Alex Bilodeau and that whole story, and the first gold medal ever on Canadian soil by a Canadian athlete, and like, who knows? I mean, I know there's talk about 2030 and it coming back, and maybe it'll happen, maybe it won't. But even if it doesn't, to know that we've done it once, and I had a small role in it, but still, just to kind of be in the midst of it and to see the city embrace it the way it did was a memory that I'm going to hold forever. So pretty cool. A couple of weeks here, and then just I went to the closing ceremony as well. So right after the gold medal game, was at BC Place across the street and saw the closing ceremony. So another kind of cool event, once in a lifetime kind of thing. At least I think it will be. I don't have designs on getting to any other Olympics elsewhere around the world, but I guess you never know. So we'll see how it all plays out. But I look back pretty fondly on. I mean, that was such an incredible time in the city when you think of, the BC Lions won the Grey Cup in 2011, and the Canucks got to Game 7 of the Stanley Cup Final, and the Olympics were in there, and then the Canucks backed it up with another really good season in 2012, and there was just a lot going on at such a high level. That's probably something that we'll never see repeated in this market, just to have that much sustained success of both national and international prominence, to be really the epicenter of it all. So pretty cool couple of years here for the city of Vancouver.
Yeah, that was just it. I'm hoping it comes back for 2030, but I know taxpayers aren't very happy about it, but it is what it is. I hope so. We're already 50% built, so it's probably even more than that, 80% built. A couple friends of yours I've had on the show: Don Taylor, Moj, Sakaris, Dollywall, Ritual, Sikowski. Craig Button's been on twice. Rod Peterson from Regina area, and Farhan Laji, all great guys. I also, this one, I just added this today. I also have a friend. Her name is Black Sam. She was the girl that was taking a course at BCIT, and I believe you interviewed with her one time. And I don't know if you remember that, but okay. And did you see, or were you at the game last night?
I was.
Yep, me too. Quite the atmosphere in there. I was sitting 3 rows in front of the Larshiders. So
things I never thought I would see in my lifetime. Tommy Larshide at the age of 82 in a hydraulic lift, being raised up there to this incredible reaction and ovation. And obviously the Larshiders named in his honor. And, I had a chance to talk to Tom before the game. He was up in the press box with his wife, Leslie. And I grew up listening to Tom Larshide. That was my introduction to Tom, Jim and Tom on the radio. I would go to sleep at night with a transistor radio and listening to Canuck games, and never thought in my lifetime that I'd have the chance to work with Tom. But for a while there, towards the end of his career, was part of the Canuck broadcasts and on the radio, hosting the pre and post game shows. And so just a massive thrill to be around Tom, his passion, his energy, even at, this stage of his life at 82, still the big smile. And it was just so good to see him back in the rink. And an absolute legend, a guy that totally got it, understood that it was show business, it was entertainment. He wasn't a hockey expert. He wasn't an X's and O's guy. He wasn't into analytics, but he was on the air. And when the puck dropped, it was all about, being a showman. And there were very few like him when he was doing his thing. So a ton of respect, and just so good to see him back there and seeing the people showing some love for Tommy Larshide last night.
Yeah, it was electric in there last night with having them all there. I mean, I know I personally enjoy it, but because it gets people going, I want the crowd to be loud as possible and engaged. But I know they took a little bit of hater comments just on people saying, "Oh, we don't pay $300 to sit in the lower bowl to have a bunch of drunk idiots around us." But I enjoyed it, and I'm pretty sure most of the comments I read everywhere, people enjoyed it. And I wonder if the Canucks on the ice, did you get to interview anybody today or talk to anybody and see if they enjoyed the atmosphere last night?
Did not. They traveled to Minnesota
Oh,
today.
yeah, right.
So
they were on the road.
No,
They left
Yeah.
this morning.
It didn't come up last night just because the disappointment was so evident that, you kind of have to know when to read the room. And there are nights where the players would be happy to talk about the crowd and all that kind of stuff. But, last night was obviously a disappointing loss, and to give away a single point on a night that they needed to, it was just, it didn't come up in the post-game media availability. So I'm sure they heard. I mean, how could you not? And it was fun. Rogers Arena gets a real knock about being pretty dead. And I've had the great fortune to travel around the National Hockey League and be in every other building. I haven't been to Seattle yet, but there are some other rinks where it's just rocking and rolling all night long. Now, part of that is the Canucks haven't been very good for the last bunch of years, right? So it kind of goes hand in hand. The fans need something to get excited about. The players and the team feed off that energy. But if the team's not very good, and that's been the case for far too long, that you can try to manufacture the excitement and the enthusiasm, but you can also tell when it's real and it's organic. And so it was cool. It certainly stood out last night just because it was out of the norm. But as you said, I don't think they're going to be able to do that on a regular basis to get whatever it was, 1,500, 2,000 people right behind the net in the lower bowl. Usually those tickets are sold. But with Ottawa in town, I guess maybe there were a few extra tickets.
Actually, the Canucks took to all the season ticket holders that were in that section and upgraded them. And then
right. But the only reason they could do that is because they had space. Like if this was a playoff game, every seat would be spoken for, and you wouldn't be able to configure a supporter section that way in prime seats in the lower bowl. So it was because it was late season, it was Ottawa, and they had a little bit of organizational flexibility, but I'm glad they did it. It was fun. And, I'd like to see them do a little bit more of it, but at the same time, I'm a believer that when there's playoff hockey, and it's been 7 years since there's been a playoff game at Rogers Arena, which is just crazy to think about, but you got to go back to the spring of 2015. When there's playoff hockey, Rogers Arena, it can get loud and it can be spontaneous. You don't need to sort of set it up with a supporter section. The people just bring the noise on their own. But in the regular season, that's not always the case. And sometimes, you got back-to-back games. Again, it just felt like the perfect kind of storm to set it up so that you had that the cheering section, the supporter section. And it was fun. I mean, they were loud all night long. And so I'm sure the players heard it. How could they not?
Yeah.
And
unfortunately, it was a makeup game too. So it was
exactly.
It was a COVID game that I lost. A little just personally though, I kind of was like, oh well, I'm paying $170 for my seat here, but they're giving them the $60 seat two rows behind me. That was one thing that came to mind, but that's kind of a hater. I don't need to be a hater. Who's your favorite Canuck that you've ever interviewed?
Oh, there's lots of them. I've been at this a while. I was in Kamloops for 5 years and started covering the Canucks on a full-time basis back around the turn of the millennium, so sort of the year 2000. So over 2 decades now, year in, year out, and there have been so many good guys to come through that room. Obviously, Daniel and Henrik are right up at the top of the list, and they truly were better people than they were hockey players. They were amazing hockey players, but it's a long list. I always enjoy dealing with Marcus Naslund. Brendan Morrison was terrific to deal with. Willie Mitchell was an incredible interview. There have been lots of guys. The goaltenders are always fun. They're kind of their own unique creatures. A lot of them have different personalities. Jacob Markstrom, it took a little while for him to come out of his shell, but once he did, you could sense sort of the presence that he had in that locker room. Just cuts an imposing figure at his size, and he wore his heart on his sleeve. And so I always you never knew what you were going to get from Markstrom, but he was a fascinating guy to cover. Corey Schneider was a really cerebral, thoughtful guy. Ryan Miller, again, really articulate. And then, Roberto Luongo just brought goaltending to another level in this market. And when you think of the pressures and the drama and making him captain and then to get to the playoff runs and the failures early on and then to game 7 of just what an incredible run. And then obviously the drama after the fact with the Heritage Classic and finally getting moved out of here. But to his credit, I thought he handled it brilliantly. Were there a couple of slips up? Yeah, but he had a microphone in his camera and a camera in his face every single day that he was on the job. And it's impossible to handle that perfectly, but I thought he did a pretty good job. He kind of found his sense of humor. It went hand in hand with the Twitter account. And, and then once he got a little more comfortable in the situation and think about it, like you come from Florida where there's no coverage to a market like this one where you're the goaltender of a team that's building into a legit Stanley Cup contender. So, I think there was some learning on the job for him, but no, I got all the time in the world for Roberto Luongo. And, I hope that they figure out a way to honor him properly in Vancouver. And I know it gets a little bit tricky just in terms of, is it a jersey retirement? Is it Ring of Honor? He's going into the Hall of Fame. So I hope that, he and the team can get together because every time he's come back and, whether it was a player or even when Florida came through here and they showed him as part of the management group, this city has embraced this guy. And, obviously there were some ups and downs during his time here as a player, but I do hope that there's a permanent home for him at Rogers Arena somehow, some way before too long.
You have a favorite Canucks jersey?
You know what? I'm not you mean of the ones that they've worn over the years?
Logo
because I'm not a jersey guy. I see you got the collection going. There's people that are like, oh, you must have this incredible collection of memorabilia. Maybe I've missed out, but it's just not something. I'm not a collector of anything, and my office is pretty clean when it comes. I've got a couple of things along the way, but nothing that really stands out. And I certainly don't have any kind of collection. But over the years, with the uniforms that they have worn, I am a sucker for the black skate. It looks good. And, when you look at the one night they wore it and what they did to the Calgary Flames, you're thinking, man, they should have worn that a few more times this season. Maybe they'd picked up a couple more points along the way. And then I didn't get that. You've got it. You've brought in the helmets. You've brought in the gloves. All the inventory's there. Why would you only wear it once, especially when you have the success? The people love it. It's a special event jersey. I'm a little disappointed that the organization didn't find a way to squeeze it into a couple more home games along the way. So I like the black skate. The one that I like these days, though, is the alternate, the blue one that they're wearing. I don't think they wear it enough, quite frankly. But I like that. Of the current jerseys and the current options, if we exclude the black, because the black was a one-off this year. But I like the alternate blue that they're wearing right now.
The one with the rink?
Yeah, it's simple, but I don't know. It just it something works there for me. So that's one that I kind of am partial to. But it's the Canucks. You just wait a year and there'll probably be 3 or 4 more options. So you never know with this group exactly what's going on. I'd like to see, when I see Abbotsford wearing the base green, I think that's a hell of an outfit. I'd like to see the Canucks, borrow from their farm team on a couple of nights and trot out something with a little bit more of a primary green uniform. So maybe there is some synergy there. Maybe there will be some options, the Johnny Canuck logo, whatever the case. We'll see if they decide to branch out and try a few new looks here in the future.
Have you ever seen the guy that goes to the Canuck games and dresses up as Don Cherry?
I can't say that I have. I've probably seen him on social media, but I'm up in the press box. I'm not
that's me.
That's you. Okay. Well, then I've missed out unless I've seen it on social, but I don't get down to the concourse. I don't, unfortunately, I'm up in the perch in the press box and, you can see the arena, but you don't really get a chance to see all that's going on down in the seats. But something tells me that you would do a mean Don Cherry impression.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I got a good one. I got the dog and everything and the suit. Yeah. I got multiple suits. That's for sure. What's your favorite venue to watch a game at?
When I got the job traveling around covering the Canucks with TSN a couple of years ago, there were three on the list that, I couldn't wait to get to. Madison Square was right up there. I had been in Madison Square Garden once in my life, and it was in the summer of 1999. I went to the draft in Boston when the Sedins were selected. And having flown across the continent and had never been to New York City. So I flew to New York, drove up to Boston, and then I got to spend a couple of days back in New York City after the draft. And one of the things that I wanted to do was go to Madison Square Garden. So I paid for the tour, and it was pretty cool. The basketball floor was down at the time, so the ice rink wasn't in. But part of the tour, they took us into the Rangers locker room, and this was months after Wayne Gretzky had played his final game of the National Hockey League, and they still had his stall with all his gear in it. Everything else had been cleaned out. So it was sort of this shrine to Wayne Gretzky. That was pretty cool. But I promised myself at some point in my life I would get back there for a hockey game. And so, was able to check that off and have seen, I think, 3 or 4 there now. Chicago was another one. I would have loved to have gone to old Chicago Stadium, but obviously it's been replaced by the United Center. Still wanted to get there, just the anthem, the atmosphere, everything else. And so I've seen it, but I kind of feel cheated because when you think of the Canucks and the Blackhawks in those 3 straight playoff years and the hatred and the animosity and just the, energy in that rivalry, well, by the time I was covering the Canucks, at least traveling and covering the Canucks, they weren't very good and the Blackhawks were worse. So, I feel like I've seen a game in Chicago, and I have, but I don't know that I've got the full experience because I certainly didn't see playoff hockey in Chicago. But Chicago, United Center was another one. And then Montreal. Just as a kid growing up, a kid in the 70s, the Habs were dominant. One of my older brothers was a Montreal Canadiens fan. And so, I had a sense early on in my life of what the Habs were, what they meant, and how big a deal they were. And so, again, always wanted to see a game in Montreal, and was able to do that a handful of times, and it didn't disappoint. The Bell Center is an incredible building. You look at Rogers Arena, and I think capacity is 18,500 or 6, and the capacity of the Bell Center is 21,000. Like, it's 2,500 feet more, in the building. So just to give people a sense of, how big it is, like, obviously it's a big deal in Montreal, but the building physically is massive. And so it was pretty cool to be able to see a Canucks Montreal Canadiens game. So those are the 3. There were other places. Toronto on a Saturday night is pretty cool to see Hockey Night in Canada, that kind of thing. And then there's some sort of unheralded ones, like Columbus is low-key was one of my favorite buildings. I think it's, they've done a really nice job in Columbus, building up the arena and the district around it and all the bars and restaurants and those types of things. And the building just had a cool feel. I don't know. Maybe it was the Cannon. Nashville, again, that was a city I wanted to get to. And so, there aren't any bad. Vegas now, Vegas. I think that was the first year that I was out on the road on a full-time basis, and Vegas came into the league and didn't really know what to expect. I mean, had been to Vegas but I wasn't sure what kind of market it would be. And it was incredible. Right. Anybody that has not been down there, especially now that they've got an NFL team, like, make a weekend of it and just go and see the Golden Knights one night and go to an NFL game and do whatever else you want to do and rip it up in Vegas. But that's an experience certainly that I would recommend to anybody if you get a chance to take in a game at T-Mobile on the Strip.
Yeah, definitely on my bucket list to go down there and if I could catch the Seahawks and Canucks on a weekend, it would be perfect. Yeah. One thing you're talking about the draft there, my idea of what I want the team to do here is we blow up the team, we collect picks for 2023, and then we package them all together to get Connor Bedard.
Well, hey, I'm a North Vancouver guy, so I got a soft spot for Connor Bedard. Trust me. But I mean, this idea of, like, how many picks would it take? Like, whoever gets the first overall pick, this guy's going to be generational. Like, I don't think any. I know, but I don't think anybody's trading. So, I mean, you could try to position it so that you have the best odds in the lottery and take your chances there. But, would I love to see a Vancouver guy absolutely turn the fortunes of this organization around and be the guy that, leads them to a Stanley Cup. Come on. Like you couldn't write a better script, but a lot of things are going to have to happen between now and then. So let's see how it all plays out. But, for me, I guess I'm sort of reinvested in this group here with the way that they've played under Bruce Boudreau. And, for the longest time, I thought maybe we had all overestimated the team that had the success in the bubble. And the way that the Canucks are finishing up, I think we're seeing there's reason to believe in Elias Pettersson again. There's reason to believe in Quinn Hughes, that Thatcher Demko, wasn't just a 3-game flash in the pan bubble Demko, but has turned into a legit stud goaltender. So, the last management group was unable to support them and surround them with the right pieces. We have to see if this new management group, they really have done nothing to put their signature or their stamp on this team. Traded away Tyler Mott, got out from under the contract of Travis Hamonic, and both of those, those are good things that had to be done at the trade deadline. But, in terms of building this, this is all on Bruce Boudreau and his coaching staff and the players. Management really has barely touched this roster. So the challenge is to take that core group that people believed in a couple of years ago, and there's reason to believe in them again. And now it's about, building it out from there and supporting those players and finding the right pieces and at the right price point, because obviously that was such a big problem for the last management group. There's a lot of work in front of Jim Rutherford and Patrick Alvin and the people that they brought in around them. But, this is going to be a fascinating offseason. There is no doubt, no matter how this finishes for the Canucks, it looks like they're going to come up short. But even if they do fall just short of the playoffs, I think we've seen kind of what's possible with Elias Pettersson taking his game to a level that we all thought he was capable of. And, if JT Miller and Bo Horvat and the seasons that they've had, but I think it's important to remember, as much fun as it's been with Bruce, there it is, and him getting the best out of these players, this is still just a mid-pack team. They're scratching and clawing to get into the playoffs, where Jim Rutherford was brought in to take this team to a contender status. So, there's still a lot of room that they've got to grow here. It's been fun, and damn, it's beaten the alternative of flushing the final 30 games of the season as they've done for too many years here. But just remember that this is a team that's scratching and clawing to get into the playoffs, and really it's all about getting this team to be a Stanley Cup contender.
That's just it. I, in November, sold most of my games. And then thinking, okay, well, this team's going nowhere this year. And now I want my tickets back. And last night was the first game I'd been to since November because they sold everything.
Oh, well.
But I got a couple more. Do you got a few more minutes?
You bet.
Okay. Have you actually ever had the chance to sit down with Connor Bedard?
I have never sat down one-on-one in person. Okay. I've interviewed him a couple of times.
Yeah, me too. Yeah,
over the phone. But yeah, I mean, look, as a North Van guy, got word, when he was 10 and 11, keep an eye out for this guy just doing incredible things. And, at 10 and 11, let's be honest, it's pretty hard to separate, guys that are going to be phenoms. Even if they stand out from the rest of their team or their league at 10 or 11, that happens a fair bit. But he's just continued to develop and has separated himself from the pack in his age group. And these last couple of years, I think, now a recognizable name, and it's not just, oh, this guy's good. He's doing ridiculous things as a 60. And I have a history in the Western Hockey League covering, I saw Jerome McGinley score 63 goals in the Western Hockey League one season. And to see Connor Bedard score 50 and 51 as a 16-year-old, he's putting himself in pretty select company. So believe the hype, it's real. And, back to your point, it would be incredible if somehow the Canucks could swing a deal or two that would give them a legit shot. But
there really hasn't been a big draft day deal since the Sedins. And look what that did. So, Horvat, but that's just, you're still not doing a draft day deal
right.
Pulled off.
But again, every team in the league is going to recognize this guy's potential. And the team that wins the draft lottery a year from now, you almost never see the first overall pick traded anyhow. But when it's a generational talent, a guy that could, absolutely set a franchise up, then I don't think they're peddling. I have no idea what the offer would have to be, but it just, feels to me like he's the kind of guy that franchises would want to build around. So going to be wild to watch him as a 17-year-old. And, if people have a chance to see him in junior hockey next year, that's probably it. Because I would imagine there's only one more year of junior hockey. He gets drafted and then he's going to be in the show and he's going to be a star, a superstar.
Going right to the show for sure. Yeah. That's why I'm hoping next year, actually, the dub actually opens up and we get to see that Alberta conference come west. Another fan of mine, or I'm a big fan of and friend of the show, Bowen Byram. Is there any way we can make this deal happen, do you think? I really want to see him in Vancouver.
Well, I'm just happy to see him back in the National Hockey League. I was worried. We've just seen too many guys that have had tough goes with head injuries, and for him to have that at such an early year or early stage of his career, and as part of this incredible Colorado team that, they look like the real deal. And so it looks like they're setting up for a long playoff run. And I was worried that he may not be a part of it. So I'm really heartened just to see him back doing what he does so well, doing what he loves to do. And let's hope that, he puts the head injuries behind him. But we know that they're such a tricky thing. But look, there was talk there ahead of the deadline about Colorado maybe going all in, and the JT Miller talk. I think, and who knows how far any conversations between the Canucks and Colorado actually went. But from a Canucks perspective, I was like, damn, absolutely. Those are the types of players you should be asking for, whether it was Bowen Byram, whether it was Alex Newhook. If you're going to trade JT Miller, ask for the best players that are available on the other team. And Colorado wouldn't want to trade a Bowen Byram, but if they wanted a JT Miller, you got to give something to get something. And so I understood kind of how those trade talks made some sense on a couple of levels. Ultimately, it didn't happen. But, Colorado's going to run into cap problems, as all really good teams do. And, we see it all the time. I mean, they've benefited by being able to take on a guy like Devon Toews, but eventually, Nathan McKinnon's not going to play for $6 million for the rest of his career. And so his next contract is going to be through the roof, and it's going to squeeze some guys out. And so never say never. I do think that that's just the reality of today's National Hockey League is, you build a really good team, but you have to be prepared. And, look at a team like the Blackhawks a decade ago, and they were able to win 3 cups, but they had to be flexible and they had to keep moving parts in and out. And, so it's not the wildest thing in the world to think that Colorado may be squeezed and may have to part with a player like Bowen Byram. And
I was jumping up and down when all of a sudden the Canucks media started bringing up Byram's name, because I wanted him. I was screaming at when he went 4th overall or 6th overall. No, it was 4th overall to Colorado at the draft. I was there at the draft and I was screaming, just livid, because I wanted him to slip down to us. But and when I had Craig Button on before this season happened and before the concussions, Craig said to me that the only way the Canucks get him would be to get Quinn Hughes. So when his name was popping up for somebody like a Besser or a JT Miller, I was like, okay, well, this is going to be great, because he's a franchise D-man as well. One thing, Bruce, there it is. What do you think of that? And I actually had the rap group tag team.
I know, I saw that.
Oh, you did see that? Okay.
Yeah, good get. It's fun. It's good fun. And again, when you think of how low this franchise was and this fan base was in early December, when they had 8 wins in 25 games, and change had to happen. It did. I mean, the brand was taking a beating. It was a business decision. They needed to boost consumer confidence. And so, look, say what you will about Travis Green as a coach. And I know not everybody believes that he was a great coach. He was a good guy. He and I, we butted heads, but that's just the nature of the business. But I had a ton of time and a lot of respect for Travis. And Nolan Baumgartner was part of that Kamloops team. I've known Nolan for 25 years. Jim Benning and John Weisbrot, these are human beings. I didn't want to see anybody get fired, but they know that it's part of the job. And if they don't perform, that was a possibility. So with all of that said, the team, as bad as it was, they'd gone all in, made the trades last year, the first rounder to get Garland and all those things. And then, they come out of the gates and they have 8 wins, 25 games into the season. So to bring in a personality like Bruce Boudreau with this track record of taking over depressed assets and turning them in the right direction, he seemed like the right fit. But even at that, like, I thought this was a wounded animal. I didn't know if it could be rehabilitated. And then for him to win his first 7 out of the gate, pretty damn cool to see the fan base react to a coach that way. And obviously to see his players react to his coaching style and just the positive reinforcement and everything else. So, the Bruce, there it is. It felt pretty natural and organic. Like, it didn't feel forced. It wasn't team driven. It wasn't, I don't think, somebody was sitting there thinking, okay, what kind of chant can we come up with for the coach? Like, I don't know, ultimately its origins, but it was fun. And there had been so little fun at Rogers Arena for far too long with COVID. And then the start of this season that it kind of felt right. And so, and if they're chanting it, it usually means that the team is winning, that they're having success. And, I know Bruce has kind of downplayed it, but I think he understands it on that level at the very least, that he may want it to be more about his players and he doesn't like the attention on him in game. But if the crowd is chanting Bruce, there it is, it's because the Canucks are winning and that they're doing good things and that it's fun to be back in the building. So, I'm kind of on board with it. It's something different. It's unique. And, I think Canuck fans can take ownership of it, and it sort of galvanizes them as a group.
You think we ever see Jet Wu, and which Canuck in Abbotsford do you think makes the next step next year?
Yeah, I have to admit that there are so many others that cover prospects better and more in depth than I do. I'm so in on the NHL team. I mean, I keep an eye on the farm team, and certainly now that it's here in the backyard, but I to know the ins and outs of Jet Wu's development this season, that's not for me. But when I look at this team's depth chart at the NHL level, and you just see opportunity screaming on the right side, and for a second round pick, like, you wanted to believe that there was going to be room for a guy like Jet Wu to develop and become, an everyday sort of hard rock, not spectacular guy, but just a guy that could be a physical force and, hold his own at the NHL level. And I'm not writing him off. Like, everybody's development path is a little bit different, but, he certainly isn't like a prospect that's on that trajectory that's a can't miss kind of guy. But again, I look at the right side and, it's certainly a weakness and an area of need. And so when there was all that talk of JT Miller or Besser at the deadline, absolutely they had to. And even if they're going to trade them, one of those guys in the offseason, they still have to look at a right side, young right side defenseman. And, so I hope for the best for Jet Wu. As far as, guys down on the farm, I mean, let's be honest, there aren't a lot in the pipeline that are their own drafted and developed. Will Lockwood's certainly not looking out of place as he's ascended. He'll go back to the American Hockey League for the playoffs, but he kind of looks like a guy that has reached a level now that starting next season, I think he's a full-time NHLer. So this team hasn't done enough of drafting and developing its own to the National Hockey League. And, I think Will Lockwood's going to be a success story in that regard. Still kind of curious to see where it all goes for Mikey DiPietro. And I haven't given up on him. Sometimes goaltenders take a little bit further, longer to get where they want to go. And Spencer Martin's an example of that. Goaltending is such a numbers game and only 2 nets. And, when they had the 3 guys down in Abbotsford for the first half of the season, like, that's never a good situation for goalies, even at practice. Like, you're switching off nets, you're not getting all the practice time and all the drills that you would want. So I hope that he's such a good dude to deal with and has such a great positive outlook. And, I hope that carries him back to the National Hockey League eventually. Some unfinished business. He's had sort of 2 looks. He's been thrown into some tough situations, still looking for that first victory. And so I hope that he gets it. And, I do think that there's going to be opportunity. Like, Demko's the guy here for a while, but, we've also seen that can change in a hurry. And the minute you think that some goaltender is cemented in place as his team's number 1, another guy comes along. Look at Binnington, guide St. Louis to a cup and now can't get the net there. I mean, things go, they change pretty quickly in the National Hockey League. So I guess to answer your question, Lockwood's here in the NHL now and have enjoyed watching him and think that, he shows signs of being a guy that I think can stay and play. And then, I mean, obviously Danil Klimovich, because this is a team that's going to need more. I mean, we go back to this, like they're just trying to get into the playoffs. If they're going to be a contender, they're going to need more. They're going to need more top end talent. And, you need guys that put the puck in the net. And so Klimovich, that's what he's supposed to do. And again, like when you think of a guy that turned pro as 18-year-old, far from home, the language barrier, everything else, and by all accounts has been a pretty quick study and, is holding his own at the American Hockey League level. I want to see him in a couple of years. Like, where is he? And as he gets more comfortable and confident, and you just hope that he can continue to sort of rise through the ranks at the American Hockey League level. Be certainly a top 6 guy, and power play time next year. Should be more comfortable with his surroundings, and then maybe at some point next year he's an option to be a call up, or maybe it's 2 seasons from now. But absolutely going to watch the development of Danila Klimovich, because you could see, the raw skill, the guy can score goals and can shoot the puck, and let's see how far that takes him. But I think they're banking on him panning out and being a legitimate goal scorer in the National Hockey League.
2 more for you. If you're having a dream dinner party, you can invite 3 famous people, dead or alive. Who would you want to sit down with?
Oh, I like that question. Go back to golf. I'd have Tiger at my table. I've been fortunate enough to interview him a couple of times, but casual dinner party, I'd have Wayne Gretzky. I've got some things that would love to pick his brain about over the years. And dead or alive. Oh boy. That opens up an awful lot of options.
For me, I go with Tupac, Seth Rogen, because he's Vancouver and it's 420. So, and then I always want to sit down with Paulina Gretzky.
So I'll take Dad. You get Paulina at your table. Maybe you'll have more. You may have more fun at your table. Who knows? But all right, if I'm going to round it out, I guess I stick to the sports realm. Muhammad Ali. I just think when just the story is such an incredible one of, just the era in which he grew up and to rise to the ranks that he did. So that would be a pretty cool table, pretty cool dinner table. I think Tiger, Muhammad Ali, and Wayne Gretzky.
And describe what qualities a good sports writer must have. And a little side note to that question, how much does Botch meant to the whole Vancouver writings and sports broadcasting?
Yeah, I think to answer the first part of the question, you certainly have to have a curiosity. Like you've got to have this sort of hunger to find out things that other people aren't finding out and figuring out. And, I guess I've kind of got a curious mind, and I'm a guy that loves the minutia of covering the Canucks. So that's not for everybody. Like some people are way more into analytics, and I like analytics, but I love just going to a practice and looking at the line combinations and, who's there and taking attendance and why isn't somebody at practice. Like no details too small. Like I cover the Canucks, no stone left unturned. And so if people follow me on Twitter, some of it might look pretty mundane, but that's my job. Like my job is to cover this team, and I'm all about finding out information and that kind of stuff. So I think you have to be curious. I think you have to understand the storylines, and most people in this business do. But when I say that, like people don't want to consume things that they already know about. Like I think you have to be able to figure out the storylines and then attack them and try to tell people why things are happening. And again, like one of the things that served me well throughout my career is sort of this mantra of tell people things they don't know, as opposed to telling them things they do. Like when I look at Twitter and people that I follow are telling me stuff I already know, I'm like, why waste my time and your time? So, when I look at my tweets, I'm trying always to come up with something unique that somebody might think, oh, wow, like I didn't know that, or, I hadn't thought about it in that way. So that's kind of my mindset when, I take to social media. As for Botch, like I could go on for hours. I mean, he became a really good friend of mine. And for the first bunch of years that we were on the beat together, I wasn't sure what to make of him. Like we were colleagues, certainly, and we would say hi at the rink and small talk and that kind of stuff. But, we weren't terribly friendly, and we certainly weren't friendly away from the rink. And then, when I think back to the start of the podcast, and I got laid off by TSN in November of 2015, and I really didn't know if that was the end of the line for me in media. I mean, jobs were shrinking, layoffs were happening. It was a competitive industry, but I had a family to support. And so, I couldn't just jump at the first job that was there. And I really didn't know. And Botch was so supportive. And, he devoted an entire provies to my layoff and sort of how important it was to get me back in, asking questions and, giving no fucks, just like asking the questions the fans wanted answered. And that's something I've always tried to do. Like I kind of put when I say, understanding the stories, I try to put myself in a headspace of, I've got this press pass. Like I've got access that the 18,000 people that are in the building don't have. Like, what would they want to ask the coach if they were sitting here? And so, that's never something I've taken for granted, that I try to kind of be a man of the people in that regard. I'm not trying to be smarter than the coach. I'm not trying to, set a trap for the coach or anything. Like, I'm just like, what would these people, like, they were at the game. What would they ask if they were sitting here? And so, Botch was really supportive of me. And I thought, damn, like, I think of him as a colleague. He wrote really nice stuff about me. And I didn't realize that, sort of this level of respect. And then fortunately, the province reached out and said, hey, like, we're not sure what we have to offer, but we know that we want you on board in some way. And here's what we're thinking. And this was really on sort of the leading edge of, podcasts were a thing, but they certainly weren't as prominent as they are now. And in the Vancouver hockey market, they really weren't all that prominent. There were a few. And the province was trying to figure out what it was. Like, it was a newspaper, but newspapers landing on your doorstep with yesterday's news were quickly becoming a thing of the past. And so they were trying to reinvent themselves and adapt to the digital space. And this idea of putting me and Botch together on a podcast, and it turned out to be magic. Like, it really gained this foothold in the market. And look, I am under no illusions. He was the star of the show. I was kind of the, I would set him up. I knew which buttons to push that would bring out the best in him and get him ranting and raving as only he could. And we became a really good team, and then we became really good friends. And then, as it turned out, I started to travel, and he was out on the road as well. So we would have dinners and, share flights and hang out in airports and those types of things, and just became really good friends. And, when I look back on my career, and I hope that I have many, many years remaining, but it's going to be hard to beat the Patcast. There was just something about it that, it grabbed a foothold in this marketplace. It became appointment listening. And it was just so much fun. Like, that was more than anything. It was just the two of us. We covered the Canucks. We did no preparation. And that was part of it too. Like, neither one of us wanted to, like, the night before we didn't, hey, what are we going to talk about? I want to go hear it. No, like, we both covered the Canucks. We felt like we should be able to have an educated conversation about any issue involving the hockey club. And so it was totally spontaneous. And I think that was part of it too, that, what you heard was just the two of us hammering away on topics as they were being recorded. There was never a script. There was never any discussion about, let's go here or let's not go there. It was just two guys doing what they love to do. And that's talking about the hockey club. So, if I have a regret in life, and look, I lost a friend, and Kat lost a husband, and the kids lost a dad, and all that kind of stuff. So I don't want this to sound self-serving, but I would have loved to have known how far the Patcast could have taken us. Like, what were the heights we could have reached with that? When I see how prominent podcasts are now, where guys are making livings off podcasts, and
everybody's got one.
Yeah, but the Patcast sort of had set the bar in the market. It had risen above. And I just remember we did an on-location podcast out at Woody's Pub in Coquitlam. And
hey, right here, a couple blocks away. I'm sponsored by the John B.
And we had, I don't know, 150, 200 people in the room. And we just had a blast. Like, the podcast came to life, live audience. There was that energy. And I remember at the end of the night, some guy, and I'd never met him before, and he came up to the two of us and he said, someday this is going to be your meal ticket. And at the time, Botch was he was the leading writer in town, and this idea that the podcast was going to be it, like, it was kind of laughable. I mean, we thanked him for his support and encouragement and all that kind of stuff, but as I look back now, I mean, we were a little bit ahead of the curve and maybe ahead of our time, because we struggled to find sponsorship for that thing. And now when I see some of the sponsorship available to podcasts, like, I absolutely know that we could have crushed it even more than we did. So, that guy was probably right. Like, that might have been our meal ticket, as it turned out. And so, it's such a sad story all around. And, but I think about it a lot. I just wonder, like, I had a great chance to work with Drance on the Vancast, and now I'm working with Andrew Wadden on Rink Wide. And so I've been really fortunate to have 3 pods that, have all reached a degree of success. But I do often wonder, like, what might have been, where could the Patcast have taken us?
Yeah, you got 3 good ones going. And then, of course, that could just be because it's you.
I want to think that I play a small role in all of those. That certainly there's a common.
You got to pump your own tires too, right?
I know you do. In this day and age, you got to be your biggest self promoter, no question. And there is a common thread there when I think back to the Patcast and the Vancast and Rink Wide. But look, I'm so fortunate to be able to talk hockey for a living, and I love it. And I hope that resonates with people. That
it does. You're a legend in town.
I don't know about that, but I mean, I appreciate you inviting me on yours, and I just, that is part of the Botchford legacy, and I'm sure you know about the Botchford project, and listeners do as well, and that has become a passion project of mine, is to try to pay it forward. It's the least I can do now. I've had an incredible run, as I said. I hope that there's still a lot of time left in covering this team. Damn, I want to cover this team when it's good again. I want to cover playoff hockey in this market. So, but in the meantime, to be able to be a founding member of the Botchford Project Committee and being able to bring the next wave through and open a door for them and give them a hand up and those types of things. Because as much as I thought I knew Jason, that was one of the things that surprised me after the fact, was how many of those stories came out of, I was just some guy that DM'd him and he got right back to me and it started this conversation. And, there were hundreds of those stories. And I thought, like, this is a dad, he's a father, he's a husband, he's a leading writer. He's got all kinds of stuff going on. And yet these legendary stories of how much help he had given to basically nobodies, people that were just looking for advice, that, really liked what he did and admired him. And so, if some good can come out of his passing, it was this idea of the Botchford Project giving the next wave of aspiring writers and journalists an opportunity that they otherwise wouldn't have had. And it's all done in his name. And so to be able to bring them into the press box and, try to impart some wisdom and share some of the things that I've learned over the years, and then work with them through the editorial process, and, to have a piece published at Canucks.com, when you think of the traffic that website gets, and, it's all done in Jason's memory. Like, the Canucks could have hung a plaque on the wall in the press box, but Jason so wasn't that kind of guy. Like, I'm sure somewhere he's looking down and nodding his head that this is a great living legacy to him, is to give back and to give to the next wave. And so that's what the Botchford Project is. And we're 3 years in, and this year was a terrific year. Yeah. So, I do hope that the Canucks continue to see the benefit of it. We can't do it without them. Obviously, it's their press box and their website, but they've been terrific to work with. And Jason's widow, Catherine, hands-on picking, like, that's pretty cool that she wanted to be involved in this. And, she picks the finalists. We present her with, a short list, and then from there, she goes over all the applications, and, we're in constant communication. She lives in Toronto now, but, still wanted to be very much involved. And so, it's a really cool way to pay tribute to a friend and a colleague, and hopefully we can continue to honor his legacy for a whole bunch more years to come.
Perfect. We'll call this all off air. Actually, did you get in trouble or much slack today from that Gadet tweet?
Oh, man. Like, I thought it was a throwaway. Like, honestly, I was just pointing out before the game, the guy done 19 games without a point, 27 games without a goal. Like, no way of knowing how that game was going to unfold. But I'm just getting ripped to shreds, and it's still happening. Like, we're almost 24 hours after as we record this, and people are still coming at me. So, the funny part is, Yeah, he scored the shootout game winner against his former team and the big celly and everything else. And I love a good storyline. Like, if you're going to be the villain, play it up. And he did with the big celebration. But it really doesn't change anything with the tweet, because he played 4 minutes and 29 seconds and didn't get a shift after the middle of the second period. So, I was pointing out that he'd gone 19 games without a point. Well, guess what? He's gone 20 games without a point now and barely played. But yes, he made an impact and ended up winning the game in the shootout. So, look, it's Twitter. I've had lots of people come at me over the years.
Canuck Nation sucks for the Twitter. You got it.
Come on. Like, in my job, we need a passionate fan base. Like, can it be over the top? Sure. But I love Canuck Twitter. The characters that are out there, every day. Yeah. I mean, not a day goes by where somebody doesn't make me laugh with something that the creativity that's out there. So, I love the fact that Canucks Twitter is a thing in and of itself. Like, we don't hear about Oilers Twitter or Flames Twitter or even Leafs Twitter. Like, Canucks Twitter is the thing because it's this living, breathing monstrosity that, can it be over the top and go overboard and cross the line? Yeah, but that's what makes it special and that's what makes it good. So when people come at me, like, I got thick skin, you have to in this business. And for the most part, people show respect. And, the ones that are the total a-holes and idiots, that's what there's a mute button for, or a block button. Yeah. And I try not to use those, but on occasion, some days the patience runs a little thin, but I can handle it. Most of it was in good fun. Because again, when I thought of all the scenarios to play out last night, Adam Gaudette coming off the bench after sitting there for 2 periods and putting the dagger in, I didn't see that happening. Not at all.
I did like that Canuck Army meme that they put out where it was his wife sitting there on the chair and playoffs. It said playoffs on her face. But all right, I'm gonna thank you for taking the time. We got a whole hour out of you. I don't usually do the whole hour, but hey, we talked really good and it went really well. So I want to thank you for giving me the time of day.